I use myself as an example just because it's a readily available example, and because then I'm also not disclosing other people's personal stories. So don't take it that I'm like trying to talk about myself. It's just that I feel at liberty to talk about myself versus someone else's story. I had gone through all these really outrageous things that really no one could really relate to. I'd had a heart attack at 33 years old, a near-death experience. My husband had abandoned me on my 10th anniversary. I was in the middle of this nasty divorce and custody battle. Let's see, what else? There was a laundry list of things that was like all first-time things that were just a culmination of just the perfect storm. All things that I never had anticipated before, all at once. Just an absolute tornado of mess, right? Every single one of these things were things that no one in my family had ever experienced before. My parents they've been married to they've been together with one another since high school. They've never been through a divorce. They've never been through a custody battle. They've never had a heart attack and had a near-death experience. They never had a chronic disability. They never had a sociopath after them stealing all their money. They never had, they just never had any of these things that were happening to me. Never. Yet they knew, question, how to do everything better than I was doing it. They knew how to, they knew what I was doing wrong and how they would do it right, and how I was all screwed up across the board without ever even talking to me about any of it. And it was just outrageous. So they had like formed all their opinions based on really what it was based on. It was based on their mindset and what made cause and effect so that they could do what they wanted to do, which was not take my side and be able to justify that and all of that. But wisdom or growth from it, because you can't, when you have to know everything, you can't be teachable. You can't learn anything. So it's really, really frustrating. And also what you realize if you raise by people like this is you realize at some point that you've been taking advice from people that weren't giving you advice that was for your best interest. And they weren't giving you even well-informed advice. They were giving you advice that satisfied whatever their needs were, whatever their paranoias were, whatever their fears were, whatever they were giving advice that suited their needs. And it very well may not have even been well-informed advice. It may have been advice that was about something they knew nothing about. As this was the case with the career advice my parents gave me, with the education advice that they gave me, where to go to school, what to study, all advice that I followed, but mistakenly so. It wasn't good advice. But it was advice that suited them. It was advice that kept, that in their minds gave them a predictable outcome. And I remember listening to my dad when I was a kid growing up, is I would hear him come home from work every night, and he would stand in the kitchen and just sort of pontificate about his day and about what idiots everybody was and about how he knew better and how this and that. And he would go through a dialogue, and in a way, I knew what he was doing. I knew that he was like reworking through his day and making it all sort of better, make it all feel better for himself, so that he didn't feel so powerless. So he was retelling the stories, and instead of saying, "I wish I could have said," or he would interject, "and then I said this," and he would retell the stories as though he'd said something, as though he'd done things differently, as though he'd affected a different kind of outcome. And we all knew that's what he was doing. And I remember one time my mom, like, she must have had enough of it, and she said, "You didn't actually say that. You might have wanted to say that, but you didn't actually say that." And I just went, "Oh no, we all knew that that's what he was doing, but don't call him on it, And he just kind of like got flustered, and didn't know what to do, but with being called out on that. But and the thing about my parents too is they can definitely not. They cannot have made a mistake. Like, for them to have made a mistake, for them to admit a mistake, is so painful for them. It is so painful for them that it's ridiculous. I mean, they will end up just ruining relationships, ruining their family, ruining, just destroying lives, because they can't admit that they might have made a mistake, they might have had things wrong, or they might have acted rashly, or they might have followed the wrong guy's advice, or they might not have had enough faith in somebody, or they might have been greedy, or they might have, as though no one sees it, as though we don't know it, it was that once you get too close to them, their relationships of inevitable harm, because once you get too close to them, you see behind the veil, and that makes you a threat. And so once you're too close to them, and once they know once you see that they're not whatever they want to be, whatever whatever they're perceiving that they are, whatever they're projecting out into the world that they are, they know that you see behind that. Instead of it building intimacy and a closeness like it would in a normal, healthy person, you don't need to pretend here anymore. I love you. I know you. I see you, and I love you just the way you are. You could be yourself with me. They don't have that. That's not what they want. They want to believe that you see them exactly the way they want to see themselves. When they start acting out on me, then I started getting depressed, and I started having cognitive dissonance, and the depression and stuff was starting to bother me. And so that started putting me at jeopardy, was that I couldn't keep up a lie. And so I believed it was the truth, but once it wasn't the truth, and it was creating a cognitive dissonance into me, my body physically couldn't keep it up. And so when I had that heart attack, it seems pretty clear that they wanted me to die, because right after that was over, I was a mass exodus. Our relationship never recovered after that. And it was like, and then it couldn't, because it was like, at this point, I have a heart attack, they bail out, now I really know the truth about them, now they really can't come back around, because now I really know the truth about them. So their story has to be that I abandoned them. They just completely turned it all around and made it so that I abandoned them. And that's now the new story. That's the story that they've been telling themselves for the last decade. But of course it's not true. And if anyone were to look into it, it would make no sense for it to be true. It just makes absolutely zero sense that would be the case. But that's what they tell themselves. And really, it is more about themselves than anyone else, because they're not famous. It's not like it's not like anyone else really cares what their story is. But what it is, it's a story they tell themselves, and they reinforce for each other. Part of the reason they have to stay together is because they reinforce it for each other. They have to just completely be like, they created all this drama, created all this, weren't there as loving parents and loving grandparents, but then have to act like it's some sort of a mystery when the consequences happen. And so it's really a shame, because there's nothing more tragic. Tragedies happen, but if you can learn something from them and give them some meaning, then at least it stops being quite so tragic. But they are just the most tragic of the tragic, because tragedies happen to them and they learn nothing from them, and they just compound the tragedies, and they just get worse. They just get worse and worse. They don't ever gain any wisdom. Sociopath, the antisocial, the covert narcissist, they will do just the opposite. They will play the whole self-deprecating, I don't know anything thing. They'll act like they will, especially if they have, if they can sense, if they can pick up on that someone really prides themselves on being smart, of being an expert, of having all this expert, they will act like they don't know anything, and they will they will ask you to teach them. They're like very interested in what you have to teach them, what you have to, please, enlighten me. And I've seen my ex-husband do that. He did that with my parents. He totally did that with my parents. He's done that with counselors, judges. He's acted like, oh, I don't know anything. You just, kind of this feigned sort of innocence, this feigned sort of simple guy, ignorance, just naivete, a feigned naivete. I've seen him do it numerous times. But that's not the case for the overt narcissist. The overt narcissist can't stand to ever feel like anyone has anything up on them. They have to be the best. They have to be superior. They have to know the most, be the best, even when they don't. And the covert is just not like that. The covert will look at the overt and kind of think the overt's an idiot. They'll play the overt like crazy, which my ex-husband has played my parents like a fiddle for all these years, and then, now he's discarding them. It's interesting. It's interesting, and it's very sad. But yeah, so the know-it-all thing is something to also look for. And of course, again, you look at Donald Trump. It's exactly, he's got that syndrome completely. So the know-it-all thing. Now, so we see these are red flags, but I don't know how much they can be red flags because you're looking for both. You're looking for both this red flag and its opposite. Because you could have a narcissist either way. So if you see this tendency, then you've got an overt narcissist. If you see its opposite, this sort of teach me sort of thing, you're so smart, tell me what you know, great listener kind of a thing, then that's also a red flag. Ultimately, they're all relationships of inevitable harm. Okay, you guys, thanks a lot, and I will talk with you soon. Bye-bye.